Mm-hmm.
It's been rewired, and it rewires through a process called myelinization. And maybe I'm going too deep into the science here, but the point is that when men do this over and over and over again, this sitting in a chair and jerking off to images, they are rewiring their brains. And that's what's arousing for them. Many boys in their teens will say that when they actually like are kissing a woman, it feels kind of science fiction and alien-like to them.
Wow.
Something like weird and not right about it. It's so distant from what they've turned their brains into in terms of their seeking arousal.
Alex, I'm so happy to have you with us at the Real Undressed podcast.
Deborah, I'm so happy to be here. And perhaps overly clothed for the podcast.
No, it's about like, we're getting undressed, like kind of on a soul level, on a mental level. So it's like really peeling it down, which, you do so well. And the fact of the matter is, I love going down the Alex Allman rabbit hole, frankly, because there's so much fun stuff out there. And one of my favorite things about you, well, besides the fact, you're smart and you research and you just tell it like it is. And there's a no bullshit policy with you. At least that's certainly what I get as a viewer and listener and consumer. But also, I think I met you 11 years ago or so. And I was just wildly excited and impressed by what you're putting out in the world. So thank you for being you and what you continue to do in this.
Thank you for seeing me the way I like to be seen.
Well,
that is kind of my thing. I think that the no bullshit thing, if I'm relentless with it, allows me to connect with my audience in a way where when I really need to tell them something that I need to land, they know that I'm not bullshitting them.
Exactly.
There's method.
And I just read, I'm on your email list. And by the way, so all of you listening, I highly recommend that, just get on Alex's email list because number one, you're entertaining. And again, number two, there's just such a realness. And, look, I get your emails that you write for men and for women because I'm interested. And the one that you put out today, I particularly appreciated. It's about a smoothie supplement for men. And I'm framing this because I think it is a rare gift in this world, and particularly when we're in a conversation about sex and about sexuality, where you're unafraid to put these quotes of people who were not thrilled about what you shared. And you say, hey, this is what so-and-so said to me, but without making them wrong or there's just there are no bones about it. And I believe that really does speak to a larger context in what we're about to talk to, which is the subject of sex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And speaking of sex, like, how did you decide to have sex become what you wanted to focus on and what you wanted to, offer yourself in a way to the world of education and information and inspiration?
I think it was a little bit of an accident. A lot of people who end up doing the kinds of things that we do come at it as something that they had their own insecurities around. And for me, I think I had constitutionally delayed growth as a kid, and I could tell like 11 different stories of what it was that made me grow up into a guy who was pretty insecure. There was that time at the 6th grade dance when all the girls were on one side and all the boys were on the other. And I thought, I'm gonna be the bold guy who goes over and asks one of these girls to dance. My older sister taught me to dance, and I started walking over there, and one of them looked up and went, "Oh my God, it's Alex!" And they all went, "Ah!" and they scattered.
Oh man!
And I took that to mean it would be embarrassing to be the girl who danced with me.
Mm.
You know, now understand, I was 12.
Yeah.
Everything's embarrassing when you're 12, but it was really hard to erase that, and it was hard to erase the fact that I was always the smallest kid because I hit puberty late, and so I wasn't, good at sports. I was much smaller than the other boys, and so I think I have my own masculinity issues. Is the bottom line, and then I wanted to learn how to be good in bed and felt like I needed to learn something about that. And I remember now, I'm an older guy, and in the 80s when I was in high school, all those books that were written in the 70s, which was kind of the sort of the great renaissance of sex books, The Joy of Sex and all those books, Women, Our Bodies, Ourselves, all that stuff was written then, in the 70s. It was all in the library. And, I just started learning about that stuff, and it became kind of an obsession. And I think that I was always trying to prove myself. And then eventually, hopefully, you grow into the point where you get that, oh, it's the trying to prove myself that is the problem. And then eventually, I think we go through a process of maturity. We figure it out. And then you've got something to share. And I was a writer, really, is what I was doing. And I was hired to write a bunch of.
You're a great
Well, I still
writer.
am. Yeah, but I wasn't a sex writer. I was not a sex writer, but I was hired to write a bunch of articles for. You must know Evan, David D'Angelo.
Oh, sure.
Evan.
Yeah.
So he's one of my best friends, and so David D'Angelo, for the people that don't know, was the first guy that took this kind of idea of dating advice for men to help shy men meet women and make it into a serious business, like a serious business. He was a business guy with real marketing chops, and he sold millions of copies of his books and online programs. And anyway, he hired me to write a bunch of articles for an online magazine he was running for single guys. And so I wrote like 20 articles, and 10 of them were about sex because it was what I was interested in. And they struck a chord. And he took me out to lunch, and he said, "Man, I've read a lot of books on this subject. It's what I do. And you've got a really unique perspective. And a lot of men are really freaked out by this stuff. And you need to write a book because they need help." So I wrote a book. And the book
was Revolutionary Sex?
Revolutionary Sex. And it started selling really well. Yeah. And then that meant that people like you started saying, "Hey, why don't you come on to my podcast or whatever?" And then I was like, "Oh, shit, I've got to become an expert at this." Really?
Reverse engineer.
Yeah, in a sense. And then I think that, as I began coaching men and showing up more and discovering that I had a bunch of colleagues and competitors out there who were so broken-minded and so fucked up, and recognizing that it was really important for me to, people like us, that's not everybody out there. And in fact, the people that are most successful in this arena are the least ethical,
Okay, so say more about that, because I just want to jump in, because you said so fucked up. Like, let's talk about like fucked up how. Just unpack that for a moment.
In the world when things were more scarce, and it was about writing a great book, and that there was a gateway to writing a book called a publisher. And a publisher, they don't just, "Oh, you've got a manuscript. Great. Well, let's get to work getting that thing out there." That's not the way it worked, right? You need an agent, and most agents would reject you. And then after you managed to get an agent, that agent would have to, get you a meeting with a publisher. And most publishers would probably reject you. If you got a book published, it had been through an enormous funnel of possible rejections, and there was some assurance of quality. And then, most books failed. And then those few books that succeeded, that became a bestseller, that somebody would have heard of, were really of very high quality. That's just not the way things work anymore at all. Now, things are quite on their ear. There is no correlation between the quality of content and success in our business.
Mm-hmm.
No correlation.
Right.
It's not related. It's the quality of marketing. And there's a lot of money to be made. It's a pain issue. It's an urgency issue. For somebody whose sex life isn't working, it sucks. It's
does.
painful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard when your sex life is working. For whatever reason, it's not working. And so that's a marketing opportunity. And there's a lot of really slick marketers who are like, well, that's an opportunity. I'm going to see if I can write a sales letter or a pitch or an ad that captures that audience. And then I'll fucking worry about the book later. I'll worry about the program later. I can always hire some porn stars to shoot them some videos, which is typically what they do.
Interesting.
It's typically what they do. And then, so, and then they've got the money, the budget, and then they have a couple of porn stars shoot some porn. Mm-hmm. And that's that. And that's what's out there, So most of our colleagues, I'll use the word generously, are selling stuff that's making it worse.
And I think, making it worse, like what I see a lot is, people are still confused, right? There still isn't great sex education, at least not in the States, right? I happen to live in the States. You're at this current moment, we're doing this interview. You happen to be in Moscow and traveling.
Moscow, yeah. There's no good sex education here.
So, most of the planet is pretty fucked up when it comes to the subject of sex. And hence we're having these conversations. And so let's start with, because you work with men and women, right? I mean, you have programs and you speak to both genders, but I believe you started mainly with men in the beginning.
Started with men. Yeah. I started with men, and I still do mainly men, largely because of the economic incentive of the fact that I started with men. So it's a bigger part of my business.
Okay.
Man, everybody that works with me and for me is like, you need to do a lot more stuff for women. And I'd like to. The reason that I started making programs for women in the first place is because so many women buy my men's programs. We want 15%. 15% of the people who are reading my men's programs are women. I saw all these female names. I was like, oh, I think I see an opportunity here.
Right.
But I had some trepidation about it as well. There's a truism that if a woman writes sex advice for men, she feels very wise, because after all, she's a woman. Who better to talk to men about women than a woman? Except that we're blinded by our own preferences. And we all think that what we like is what everybody likes. Even if we know that's not the case, there's still this bias. When I read articles from women giving advice to men about sex, I always cringe and go, my God, that's not what I like. So, I was really conscious that writing advice for women would be tricky because of that. Because I speak for myself, and I'm an outlier. I'm not all men. And so what ultimately emboldened me to do work for women, and all of my work for women is predicated on this, is that I have 100,000 male readers.
Right.
And I interview and poll and survey and research them to figure it out. Because I don't,
Yeah, and this is brilliant, and that was like where I wanted to go. So thank you for like leading us exactly there. So I wanted to go to the fact that you have 100,000, this huge pool of men that you're connected with, and what are the recurring top 3 things that are the obstacle, either the confusion, the top 3 frustrations or really pain points that men are dealing with in the sexual arena?
In the sexual arena. There's what they're really dealing with and what they think they're dealing with. What they're really dealing with is disinformation and porn. That's what they're really dealing with. What they think they're dealing with,
So wait, this is great, because again, like most people, right, there's just a proliferation of porn. I mean, look, I watch porn. I'm not like anti-porn. I want to be clear about that. And I don't think it's a great place to go for education and necessarily learning how to be a great lover. It's like good for entertainment and good for like maybe, some turn on and some foreplay. So say a little bit more about the porn piece.
So I'm anti-porn.
Okay.
And,
I love that.
Yeah. And I'm anti-porn because it's destroying something valuable. It is extremely entertaining. It's way past entertaining. It's reaching right into some deep, particularly for men who are visual to begin with, and it's reaching deep inside of our psyche and primitive, powerful wiring. It's like donuts, man. It's like donuts. They're like nature never intended for some sugary, fatty, deep fried dough ball to enter the space of human consciousness. We can't resist a donut. Nobody can resist a donut. And porn's like that, man. It reaches something that's so deeply wired into us. And for men, it can be addictive. For young men, it's so freely available, right? When I say young men, I mean boys.
Yeah.
I mean boys from like pre-puberty.
Yeah.
They're getting on there. They got no problem getting on there.
You were asking girls to go to a dance, and nowadays, young boys are getting on the internet and watching porn.
Yeah, they don't go to the dance. Why would they go to the dance?
Right.
Why would they go to the dance? They can jerk off to porn. Why would anybody ever do anything else? And it is reprogramming them. There's this thing called neuroplasticity.
Yes.
And it basically, what we've discovered is you can rewire your brain pretty extensively, and everybody does. There's a natural piece to it. When you see an Olympic ice skater, jump up in the air, spin around 20 times in midair, do a couple of somersaults, land on one skate, going backwards, and it looks easy. It looks natural. It looks easy. And you recognize that it's not just that you couldn't do that. It's so much past you couldn't do that. It's so like, it's so far from you couldn't do that. You know what I mean? It's impossible, but it's easy for them. They've literally, neuroplasticity is at work there, though. They've actually rewired their brain to become, they've turned themselves into a machine that does that and nothing but that with extraordinary expertise. And no human was meant to do that. That's not natural, but they've completely rewired like how their brain works. I remember talking to a hockey player who said that he's far more stable on the ice than he is walking on hard ground.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not normal for humans. Well, and in the same way, it turns out that neuroplasticity functions through focused concentration, focused one-pointed concentration for long periods of time. And the more of like an emotional intensity you bring to it, the more you can literally rewire your brain. Now, this isn't just like rewiring it in terms of programming. This is actually hardware rewiring. The neurology changes. Like you do a brain scan, it looks like a different brain. An Olympic figure skater's brain and your brain, they don't look alike in the motor centers. They don't look alike. It's like looking at a dolphin brain. It's a different brain. It's been rewired. And it rewires through a process called myelinization. And maybe I'm going too deep into the science here, but the point is that when men do this over and over and over again, this sitting in a chair and jerking off to images, they are rewiring their brains. And that's what's arousing for them. And touch and smell and not being sitting on a chair, but actually doing something, maybe even leading a seduction, that doesn't turn them on. In fact, many boys in their teens will say that when they actually like are kissing a woman, it feels kind of science fiction-y and alien-like to them.
Wow.
Something like weird and not right about it. It's so distant from what they've turned their brains into in terms of their seeking arousal. And it creates the crazy expectations. Men think that there's a proper sequence to this, which involves maybe oral, then he goes down on her, then it's the tits, and then the fuck, and then the cum on the face. And that's what that is. Right. And there's a process, and it's normal. Well, I left out the anal. It's always the anal.
Oh, always the anal. And I left out the fact that the woman's always like begging and wet and wanting and, available, and it's just super easy because there's no issue.
If it goes, now here's the thing. There's everybody has their kink, and that kink is readily available. So whatever your kink is, you get to watch that over and over and over and over and over again. And it goes exactly the same way every time because that's what you're selecting for. And if it goes any different in the real world, it doesn't work for you. And young women are watching this too, and they think, well, this is the way it's supposed to be. And then you've got this couple who are like, that wasn't at all the way it was supposed to be.
Right. Right.
That was nothing like the way it was supposed to be. And yeah, they don't get turned on.
I'm thinking about baking all of a sudden, you know, because it's such a science, right? It's not like just kind of riffing on a meal where, you know, you're sauteing something up, but it's like, if you switch one little thing about baking, it ain't going to come out the way that you
doesn't work. Exactly.
It just doesn't work. It's not going to rise. It's not, you know, it won't be the thing. Yeah.
Right. Same deal. It doesn't rise for the man.
Oh, hello.
And the woman doesn't, right. And the woman doesn't have an orgasm.
Right.
And she's not sure she should.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so like, she doesn't, well, you know, it's not totally uncommon for a woman to get lubricated, to get wet from anxiety. So she might be wet, but she's not enjoying it. She's freaked out by it.
Right. Right.
Freaked out.
So, okay, so we were going back. So we were talking about like what men think their issue is and then what their issue is. So this is where the porn piece started.
Yeah, well, yeah, porn and disinformation. You know, there's just so much disinformation out there. There's more disinformation than good information. Like it's outnumbered, like a billion to one. There's more web pages than there is revolutionary sex pages. It's an uphill battle, I'll tell you. And it's a problem, you know, for 50-year-old women whose husbands have literally abandoned them in favor of their computer. And it's you know, more of a problem for younger men. The younger you get, the more of a problem it is. And because there's a visual component to sex, but sex is primarily a touching thing. It's primarily a touching thing. There's auditory turn on, there's smells, there's visual. I mean, all that is true. Yeah, all that is true. And heart connection and love and feelings, I mean, all that is in there, but it's primarily a touching thing.
Yeah.
But not with porn at all. So they don't, it's a gigantic disconnect. It's a gigantic disconnect. And so men think that the problem is that they can't get hard, they can't stay hard. They think that women are weird and too demanding and all messed up and don't accept who they are.
Don't accept who the men are, or they don't accept.
Yeah.
Okay.
They don't accept men for who they are, which is video game playing, porn watching, come on your facing, whatever, you know. And let me add a layer to this because it's more disturbing than that. Courtship is broken as well. You see, courtship is broken also because of porn, because there's a lot of porn that deals with how to get women without explicitly being so. So, you know, there's like all of these videos of men, you know, pulling up in a car and offering a woman $20 to blow them.
Right.
That's, you know, and then they all gangbang her and then they don't give her the $20 and they drive away laughing. That's a big theme in porn, or something like that. You know, not that exact thing potentially.
Yeah, but you know, it's the using and abusing of women. Right,
because you know, it's very much directed on a man who's not having a rich sex life. Indeed, he probably has no sex life, and so women are, you know, that thing that denied me what I wanted in life. And so this is comeuppance. There's something really, this is really validating for them. And, you know, there's a whole genre of, you know, like I'm pretending to have auditions for a porn movie where she'll get paid. But really, so there's all this like manipulative stuff is baked into porn. Or there's no beginning. There's just sex.
Right. There's just get to it.
But the point is that courtship is also getting looped into this, and also we're now, I don't know, 15 years into this pickup artist thing,
right?
That has infused the culture with this idea of social manipulation in order to get the pussy, which has left out completely the idea that there's a human attached to that
Right. Hello. There's like a person attached to the pussy, just like there's a person attached to the cock. I wrote a whole essay actually about this. A boyfriend of mine once said to me, this is years and years ago. I mean, when I first moved to LA, he was like, I was giving him head and he basically said, hello, there's a person attached to
He
that
said
thing.
that.
He said that to me.
I love this guy.
I trust me, he opened my world up to many wonderful things, and I'm very grateful because probably this podcast wouldn't even be here without that experience. But in any case, yes, there's like people attached to our parts. There's the whole spirit. There's that whole energy and essence of who we are that gets so lost. And I will say, because I know I get your anti-porn, but the one thing I want to just kind of throw into the conversation, do you know this filmmaker named Erica Lust? Do you know about Lust films? Okay, so I would love to give you an assignment. But no, so I met her once. I'm looking forward to having her on the podcast at some point. She makes very conscious, ethical, beautiful porn. And I found that to be really healing, again, for people who, either, again, for, I want to say a more conscious and holistic way of utilizing it. There's something there that isn't everything you're talking about, the abuse of women, the like, let's just, wham, bam, and, get to it. And a woman's always wed and, all of these things. So there is some, there's some shift happening out in that world.
So we're going to agree to disagree about that.
Okay.
Because I think that giving people permission is, when I say everybody can find their kink, and I get it. Listen, my belief is that this lust person is infinitely better than the particular shitheads I'm talking about that are creating really misogynistic crap. And there's a kink out there for everybody, including, I get off on tender, sweet, real couples. And as long as you're sitting watching tender, sweet, real couples and you're not actually being a tender, sweet, real couple, you're missing the boat. And every person is unique. Their thing and your thing, it's, I have my concerns. Now, I mean, I don't think I can stop it. I'm not particularly pro-censorship, but I think that to pretend that this stuff isn't as dangerous as heroin, I think, you want to experiment with heroin, baby, you're free to experiment with heroin. I'm all about people being free. But you just have to recognize, if people want to go out on the shooting range and play with handguns, that's cool. But we pretend in our society that porn is harmless. And I'm just saying it's not, and including this lust person. I just don't think it's harmless to sit and watch other people have sex. And if you like it, if you like that, you don't have a problem. Obviously, you don't have a problem. You're engaged in the real world. But there are so many people who, they get permission by watching that kind of a thing.
I got that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really get that. And I appreciate you bringing this perspective. And I get that. I totally appreciate that. And I thank you for saying it, because in my head, I'm thinking, there are people who are out in the world and, having an enjoyable experience with porn, and they are coupled and all the rest of this. And absolutely, I also know people who have destroyed their neuroplasticity and cannot be turned on, and they cannot orgasm with a woman because of their experience with porn. I absolutely know what you're speaking of. And I'm so glad that this has come up, because look, I mean, it's having a consciousness about whatever it is that you're doing. I mean, we're talking about sex, right? So it's like putting consciousness around that. I think, the consciousness with which you do anything and everything. I mean, you even touched upon marketing, right? It's like, so having, knowing your intention, having the consciousness around what you're doing, from that point is where the difference is made.
Yeah, and people, listen, I'm guessing your audience are not gun folk. But there are people that,
I don't think so.
yeah, but there are people that responsibly use guns. There are people that, responsibly hunt and consider themselves being, I know people that hunt and consider it very spiritual because they're becoming part of this web of which we are very much a part.
Right.
And, and then there are people who just like to shoot shit up. So that's the point is that like weapons are dangerous. And I maybe this is like way too dramatic an equivalence, but that's my fear with porns. Of course, there are couples that use it to spice up their life, and people who use it responsibly, and people who mostly have sex with real humans, and then sometimes like to get off by watching some beautiful couple make love.
Right.
Great, but that's not what the majority of people are doing with porn. That's what most folk do with it.
Right. I got that. Point taken. So you think that's like the bigger issue that men are dealing with these days? That
and disinformation. And I mean, I think men and women are dealing with this together now. See, I don't think this is a men problem. I think this is an us problem.
Mm-hmm.
The porn's out there, the pickup artist stuff is out there. But let me do that. Actually, I'm going to be doing either a blog post or a YouTube video about this soon. But there's a reason that hashtag Me Too happened now and not 10 years ago. 10 years ago, it was going on just as much as it is now. Mm-hmm. And arguably back in the Don Draper days, in the 1950s, it was going on 10 times more. So why did Me Too happen now? And the answer is because women fucking hate men right now.
Mm.
And they should, right? It was like, I think there was a time when it was like terrible things happened to some women. And maybe even many women, maybe even most women, but also, like a woman might know 50 men in her life, and one of them did something terrible to her, but 49 were wonderful. Well, now women look out there and they're like, Jesus, every man's a shithead, and it's real. It's real for them. And you and I live in a rarefied world of, I guess, really cool people. But when I look at my audience, and again, your audience maybe this is not useful to them. Your audience of the who are into the spiritual side of sexuality are very unlikely to be associating a lot with the rest of the normal folk out there. But the normal folk that go to Walmart and live check to check and all the things we read about.
Yeah.
They're really struggling. They're really struggling with the relation between men and women right now. Women don't know men that they like. Men don't know women that they like anymore. And so, it made sense. Just started to make sense. People are angry.
Yeah.
People are really angry.
It's a really,
and they're
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say they're disconnected from what it is you're talking about.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. It's a very interesting time. I mean, I think that look, I've been on the Me Too train for a long time because it's been part of my life as well. In terms of that experience, and I don't see the value, of course, in holding on to the anger, which is again why these conversations on the podcast. I think it's I was finally like, okay, get up off your ass and do this podcast already, because this needs to be heard. But let me bring it back to this, because one thing that you said a long time ago, and this is very important. I want to make sure we talk about it, because I think that it really does weave into the Me Too piece and where women are finding their voice now, and yet still not finding their voice, and even feeling confused and frustrated. And how do I be in a relationship? And how do I enjoy sex? And then aren't I supposed to be mad at men, or all of this stuff? But something you said, we were at some panel. It was a smaller event, but this was, I don't know, 11 years ago. And you had said at that point, you had interviewed, it was almost 20,000 men. And you asked them what were the top things that turned them on about women. You know where I'm going, right?
Sure,
and in the top 3 of like men from all over the world, there was one thing in common. Please share what that was.
Well, there were the top 3 by a long margin were Number one was women that are comfortable with their own bodies.
Yes. Women who are comfortable with their own body.
Yeah, that was the biggest turn on. And I think I reversed that today. And I think a lot of women wouldn't think of that. They wouldn't come up with that as being like a big turn on. But I think if I said, men that are comfortable with their own bodies, they'd be like, yeah, that'd be nice for a change. There is really something to being with a partner that's just comfortable with sex, that's not weirded out by sex, that's not weirded out particularly by their own sex. Men have shame around being weak. Women have been, again, I don't want to spend the whole podcast talking about marketing, but there's a lot of money in marketing, and money informs what media does. And media is like 90% of our lives. People watch so much television and so much internet and so much Facebook and so much Instagram. And all of this stuff is saturated by the media messages that allow it to happen. Like, Instagram's free because of ads. And television's free because of ads. Mm-hmm. And all of these ads tell women that their bodies are fucked up.
Yep.
So it gets in there. I've dated gorgeous women. I've been friends with gorgeous women who are really insecure about their bodies. Mm-hmm. So, and that's not what men want. And it freaks men out. When a woman is uncomfortable with her body, it makes us uncomfortable with all of our weird shame stuff. And then everybody, sex is messed up. And there are women out there that don't listen or are just magic. They're magic. And they resist this fire hose of stuff telling them that, their ass isn't round enough, or it's too round, or, their breasts are asymmetrical, or their vagina looks weird, or whatever it is.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, so they resist it somehow. And they're just super cool and comfortable with their body, and they're groovy being naked, and they're groovy with you looking at them and touching them and enjoying them. And then that lets me drop my shame, and then we have great sex. So that was number one. And that's a rare woman. But when men have been with a woman like that, they're like, that was the best sex of my life. I was with this woman once who was just so cool with herself. And she was cool with her own pleasure, and she was cool with how it would all work. And what positions she liked. I didn't have to kind of like play crazy guessing games. She was like, let's do this with some enthusiasm, because it wasn't freaky to her. It wasn't like, oh, if I ask him to do that, will that be weird? Then he'll see my, if I want him to be behind me and then my ass, oh no, we can't have that happen. So, it's a very, very big deal for men. And then two is that she's a good receiver, because again, men are riddled with wild insecurities. And, we want to know that we get to be your hero. And both men and women really appreciate a good receiver. Women don't even know what it looks like. Men are such shitty receivers. Women don't even know what it looks like. There's men who feel like I'm entitled to this because this is the way it happens in porn. And that doesn't feel particularly good. Like, you're supposed to give me head now. That doesn't feel good. And then there are women who are like, super tentative, and either way, they're very stoic. They can't make a lot of noise or express like real enjoyment.
What is that about men? I just need to ask, like, what about making noise? Is there something where, because I know we all have, there's a lot of shame around all of this for, men, everybody. But I'm particularly fascinated about the noise thing. And is it a man code? Are we breaking man code right now where it's like, that someone said,
no, men don't
make noise because it's not manly? Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah. So men just do what they see in porn. They don't know. Then they don't know what other men do. They don't know what real intimate couples look like, because they've never been in an intimate couple's bedroom. They don't know what that looks like. So somewhere along the line, early in childhood, they just got to know that the penis was evil and bad and wrong, must be hidden at all costs, and your sexual desire is not welcome here. That's, every man gets that at some point.
That's so healthy. Oh my God.
Yeah. So, I mean, no, but we all get it, right? I mean, if because, and it's, without any kind of education to the contrary.
Mhm.
It is true that you don't want boys going around going, your tits look tasty. You know, it's like, no, you're not allowed to do that.
We need to understand personal boundaries. Yes.
Right. But you know, you want this thing and you realize that if you just try and take it, then you're terrible. You're bad and wrong. Your sexual desire is not welcome here. And so, you know, men really suppress their sexual desire. And so, you know, yeah, like showing that off, showing that they're enjoying this, you know, is on some subterranean, deep level from earliest childhood. That is not welcome here.
Got it.
So they don't make a lot of noise. Yeah, and it's hard for them to be good receivers. But it's the same for women, right? I mean, you know, it's
Well, we're traditionally like, you know, the givers and so on and so forth. And, you know, the thing that I've talked about for so long, and obviously I think, you know, most of my work is about helping women to get comfortable and confident in their own skin and enjoy being in their bodies and to be embodied.
Amen, sister.
Yeah. And, you know, you know, that whole process is totally confusing, but the receiving part is ultimately, if we're going to get into sort of just energetics, right? Feminine, masculine energy, not gender, right? The receiving part is the feminine. The inhale of our breath is the feminine aspect of the breath, right? The exhale is the masculine. And so it's fascinating that women are terrible receivers until they practice. And then of course, once a woman becomes a receiver, you know, watch out. You know?
No, but it's brilliant. It's brilliant. I mean, I just, you know, thinking about it actually kind of fills me with a certain amount of delight. It's so, yeah, it's great when a woman can receive what you're putting out there as a man, and yeah, nothing feels better, right? And that's, it's so funny. It's true of Christmas presents too.
Exactly. I was just going to go, it's a human thing about like when you give a gift, no matter what your freaking gender, it's like you want the person to receive the gift you're giving. And if it happens to be in a bedroom or on a kitchen floor or on a couch, and it's a sexual thing that you're giving, like to have that be received, fuck yes. You know?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. There's something about, you shouldn't have, that's not particularly validating. But oh my God, I've been wanting one of these for such a long time. Honey, look at what you got me. I've been wanting one of these. And how did you know? Oh, I'm so psyched. Oh my God. You know, like that's like a good feeling, right? So
totally. And it's like, oh my God, how did you know I wanted you to give me head just like that? It feels so good.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we all want a good receiver, and we don't get it a lot, you know. So and then the third one. Again, this is a bit extrapolated, right? I mean, I was looking at, like, you know, the write-in comments of what the men said made the best sex that they had ever had. And so this was phrased in 10 trillion different ways. And I was looking at all these things, and the common denominator of what it was that they seemed to be articulating was she accepts me as I am for who I am. Mm-hmm. Like, I didn't feel weird about my sexual desires. She was like actually paying attention to me and recognizing me and seeing me and not trying to make me into some other thing. Like, I really felt comfortable to be myself around her. And it's super related to item one. You know, she's really comfortable with her sexuality and being with herself. That's the woman who gives you permission to be comfortable with who you are.
Right.
Right. And of course, this is what the men say. That trick happens in reverse. I would ask women the same thing. Mm-hmm. And I've never asked women that question in that way. But if I did, I'm certain that women would feel the same way, that when you're with a lover who is just exquisitely comfortable with who he is as a person with a sexual desire, and who you are, really who you are, who you're really being, not who he's idealizing, is delightful to him and totally accepted, that there's something about being seen and just adored for exactly who you are that's the most like, thing that there is, right? That's love.
Accepting someone for who they are is, I mean, that's unconditional love.
It's a magic power.
Exactly. Yeah. And certainly when it comes to things like sex and being in, you know, in a sexual relationship, that's huge. But just even out in the world, to accept people for who they are and who they aren't, right? I'm interested to know if you think that talking about your sexual desires, your turn-ons, your kinks is a helpful thing before you've gotten into a sexual relationship with somebody.
I wouldn't make it a sine qua non, but I think it would be very good, right? I mean, there are times when sex happens long before that conversation can happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people have difficulty having that conversation. I mean, it's fascinating. For men think they're going to need to sneak up on you with sex, right? Most men, they got to sneak up on you. Like, you want to come back to my apartment to see my thing that I have back in my apartment.
Oh, you mean the beginning of a connection rather than.
Well, right. Like, well, as you say, having a conversation about,
Yes. Okay.
prior to sex, is it a good idea? And the thing is, well, then I wouldn't have snuck up on you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know that on my agenda was getting you into bed, and that would be weird.
Right.
And I think, listen, there are men who are totally, like, really comfortable with that. And I think women appreciate it. I'm one of those men, and I've never found, like, when I say to a woman, listen, we're going to go up to my place. I'm going to do everything I can to get into your pants. And if that doesn't work out, at least we'll have some fun drinking some good wine. That's never not worked for me, or some version of just being, like, really honest about what my intentions were. I was never, like, trying to, like, let's go back to my place because this bar is closing down and I have more beer at my house.
Yeah.
Like, I never thought that was a necessary thing. I never tried to hide my desire. When I say never, I mean that I'm in my 50s and not for the past 25 years.
Right.
But prior to that, yeah, of course.
Of course.
I mean, it took me a while to get to that place. It wasn't like that was always who I was. But you do hopefully eventually mature into somebody who's just comfortable with your sexuality. And that's a huge relief to your partner, right? To your date, to anybody, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And to know, really also knowing your own body, like we were talking about, just feeling comfortable in your skin, whether you're a man or a woman. It's just such a gift in terms of what opens up, literally and figuratively, in your sex and in your sex life. Okay, but before we go, I've got 2 signature questions to ask you. And again, we are definitely going to have you back because there's just so much to talk about. So 2 things. So, this podcast, it's all about spirituality and sexuality, right? These 2 subjects. So what, Alex, is the thing that always tunes you in, right? Like tunes you into your spirit? Yeah.
Awe and love. Love is so, it's such a loaded thing. When we talk about spirituality today, we're rarely all talking about the same thing. There's so many definitions of it. The people I know who are most vocal about how spiritual they are don't seem to know much about that, from my perspective. And in that, the generally the people I know who are like, oh, I'm so spiritual. Spirit is everything in my life. All I care about is spiritual. I only talk to spiritual people, and I only have spiritual people in my life, and I must surround myself with spirit at all times. They've made their kind of spiritual thing about ego, which is exactly the opposite of what they keep telling me I need to drop. So, yeah, it's the spiritual bypass thing, right?
Right.
That's hard for me. And for me, love, again, just like spirit, ask 10 people, 10 people have different ideas about what that ought to be. But for me, true love with a capital T and a capital L.
Yes.
Involves a total surrender of ego, a total surrender of self, a total surrender of all your priorities and who you think you should and shouldn't be in service of this getting each otherness, seeing each otherness, and recognizing that union, which is, with everything, with all of manifestation, really, right?
Yes.
But the trick is done in the moment of love, where you really feel that matter of fact, obvious of coarseness of the whole thing is in your lover's eyes. And I would argue past romantic love into a more tender love, like my love for my daughter, I find the same thing, which was unexpected for me. And in awe. Awe is the other thing that really connects me. When I look out at Moscow or New York City, where I live, and I consider the electrical wiring and plumbing. It sounds crazy. that somehow like the layers of generations of years of labor of individuals working on their little piece actually all along was part of some greater plan that nobody had. Nobody drew out the map for the Moscow plumbing. Nobody ever did that.
Yeah.
But it's all there. It's all there. Every building is there, and all the streets and everything. It evolved like the species itself. There's this sense of allness of every inorganic thing and organic thing that somehow came together to create forests and mountains and all the crazy shit the humans built. And it's all kind of one big, incredible thing. When you get those moments of awe, that connects me.
Yeah,
those are the two.
I absolutely get that. Thank you. And then what is like one thing, because there are many things, I'm sure, but what's like the one, like sort of without a shadow of a doubt, is one thing that will just always turn you on?
My wife. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, the answer is the feminine. That's the answer. That's the real answer, is the feminine. And feminine for me, that energetic feminine, that my taste for it, it feels like the springtime. It feels like her laugh. It feels like the wind in her hair when the sunshine is, and there's an aliveness, and it's fertile and shy and receptive and laughing and playful and devilish. And so for me, this manifestation of the feminine is like, it's all over the place. And everywhere I see it, it's like a shard, a reflection from the light that is my wife.
Oh, wow.
Because that's an intention. I've given that to her as an offering. I've surrendered that up to her, that everything that's feminine is sourced in her. And that was like not because she just turns out to be the source of all femininity in the universe. In the same way, there's no center of the universe. Where's the center? It's all just one big. Wherever you are, that's the center. And so wherever she is, that's the center of all of that for me. That's how I know it when I see it.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So
I can't wait to meet her. So fabulous. Really, really great. Well, Alex Allman, you are a delight and a treat. Truly. And thank you for just your countless years now of commitment to this conversation about education and of course, inspiration, and really looking at a holistic, well-rounded, all sides of the conversation about sex, sexuality, relating to each other, in a romantic way and in a sexual way, and keep going, because we need more of what you're bringing. And again, I look forward to having you back on sooner rather than later. So thanks for being on the podcast.
And thanks so much for creating this.